When you think of classic horror, what comes to mind? I'm sure for a lot of you, it's an iconic slasher, and even for people who aren't fans of the genre, they'd probably say the same thing. But I think for a lot of people, including myself, a good haunting or a ghost story is what comes to mind when I think of it. Now, by no means do I think this is the most effective, but it is absolutely what I reference to someone who isn't experienced in horror, as it's typically the most digestible and it's easiest to dip your toes into. This is why I think 2016's The Autopsy of Jane Doe is one of the best horror movies to recommend to someone who's just getting into the genre. It deviates just enough from similar movies so that it doesn't feel really cliche, and it's not filled with the bloat and tiresome formula that something like the Conjuring series utilizes in their newer movies. I'd be lying if I sat here and told you it's absolute peak, but you really shouldn't expect that out of something that is just a movie about a haunting. And I genuinely think it's worth the watch. The acting is a little not great, but it tells a good story with respect to your time. And if you don't want to endure something like a long psychological horror, or you just want something fun to watch with your friends who aren't super into the genre, this is the perfect movie. So let's get into it. We start off the movie at a crime scene in Grantham, Virginia. This is a small town where most of the locals know each other. At least in the movie, I don't know anything about the social life of Grantham in the real world. The scene is grisly, showing three victims with blood splattered and dragged all over the home from the second floor all the way to the basement. When they get to the basement, they find a deceased young woman, partially buried and fully nude. Despite the police department knowing almost the entire town, they have no idea who this is, and she has no ID on her body. The home had no signs of forced entry, and in fact, it looks more like the victims were trying to break out of the house. We jump ahead and see the main characters in the movie, Tom, a coroner, and Austin, his son, in the family morgue, which is in the basement of their home, as I guess being a mortician runs in the family. The two are determining the cause of death for someone who is badly burned, as Tom quizzes Austin about the cause of death, saying it's a softball, an easy one. Austin guesses smoke inhalation, but Tom, showing his years of experience, mentions he was 30 feet from an exit, and his airways were hardly diluted, proving he stopped breathing before the fire had time to take him. This victim in particular is not important to the movie, but what Tom says is, he mentions how every body has a secret, you just have to find it. This doubles as a scene showing how seriously he takes his work. Austin gets a text and mentions that he's going to go see a movie with his girlfriend. He asks his dad when the last time he even went to go see a movie was, and he said it was The Notebook, which would have came out 12 years before this movie. The important takeaway from that is that he had gone to see it with his wife, Austin's mom, which is now a sore subject, as he asks Austin if he's okay to finish up with the body as he needs a minute to himself. When Austin finishes up, he hears someone coming down the elevator. When he yells out to Tom and doesn't get a response, he goes to investigate, where he gets jump scared by Emma, his girlfriend. She's overly excited, as this is the first time she's been in the morgue.
Got to see me at my job. Why can't I see you at yours?
You work at a bookstore.
Austin clearly uncomfortable with this idea, as he doesn't want her to get traumatized by the corpses, and also says that his dad is too strict. Tom teleports to the basement when Austin mentions this, and gives her the go-ahead to see one of the bodies. Austin pulls out the body she pointed to, Irene Daniels, who died of malignant mesothelioma. This body looks pretty rough, with the eyes and mouth already shown shut. Emma, being greedy, says not that one, and uses the excuse that she didn't point to that one, so that Austin will pull out another. This one, Louis Tannis, who died of strychnine? I googled this and it doesn't look like a real thing, but Emma, as a scholar she is, asks why his face is covered, even though it's very clear that there's a hole where there once was a face, and Tom says that it was caused by a point-blank gunshot. We also see this body has a bell tied to it, and when asked, Tom says that back in the day, it was hard to tell the difference between a dead person and a comatose one, so they would tie a bell to the body, so if they heard it jingle, they would know they were still alive. He says that he still does this because he's a traditionalist. Tom also says that this was set up to look like he inflicted the wound on himself until they found strychnine, something that is real and is a poison that likely killed him before the gunshot. Another mention of how important it is to be thorough no matter how obvious the cause of death may seem. Emma goes to remove the face covering, but Austin stops her because, again, whole dead body thing can be traumatizing, but Tom tells her to go ahead. Austin makes fun of her for getting scared, and then she makes fun of him by saying he's not going to get laid tonight. While they go up the elevator to get their date night started, we are introduced to Sheriff Burke, who is bringing down the Jane Doe from the opening scene. Austin mentions he can stay and help, but Tom tells him to go have his fun. This isn't in a passive-aggressive way either. He says it pretty genuinely and not in a way to guilt Austin, but the look on Burke's face makes Austin second-guess if he should stay and help. Emma is really annoyed about this, as apparently he blows her off all the time with the same excuse. We get the exposition that Austin actually plans on moving away because he doesn't want to work at the morgue, but is likely having a hard time telling his dad due to the passing of his mom. Despite Emma being upset, he convinces her that he just needs 2 hours and they'll catch the midnight show at the movie. She hits him with a playful maybe before leaving, and Austin heads back down into the morgue. Sheriff Burke is giving Tom the rundown of the Jane Doe, and Stanley, the morgue cat, is growling at her, but runs off after Tom scolds him. The sheriff states that he really needs some information on the cause of death by the morning, as they just found 4 dead bodies in a local home and have no explanation. He says that if he needs to release something to the press, he can always blame the other 3 deaths on a breaking and entering gone wrong, but he has no way of explaining away Jane. The two get to work and they start the recording of the autopsy, where he breaks down there will be 4 stages. They will first do an external evaluation, then an internal evaluation on heart and lungs, followed by stomach, and finally the brain. They find no bleeding or bruising on the external of the body, but find that the eyes are gray, a sign of further decomposition than the rest of the body is showing. Austin also notes that her waist is unnaturally small, snatched even, but Tom discovers something even more strange. Her wrists and ankles are completely shattered with no external signs of this. They find her body covered in some sort of dirt.
This is Pete.
Which is something only found up north, not in Virginia though, which is kind of northeast. I don't know, I'd consider it north, but whatever. Tom says it's not found here. Another discovery from the external evaluation is that her tongue has been removed, crudely, like it was cut out. Tom, using his years of experience, starts to put together a story that he ran into a few years ago. He believes that she is a victim of human trafficking, and her hands and feet were bound very tight, and her tongue was cut out for being too loud. Austin goes to photograph this, and a bug crawls out of her nose, generating fresh blood. Tom further explores her mouth and finds that she is missing a molar, but also a long piece of thread in her throat. The final part of the external investigation, they find that there are very deliberate cuts in the vaginal area, further pushing towards the trafficking idea. They start the internal examination, and a storm starts rolling in, causing the power to flicker and the radio to malfunction. Right off the bat, the incisions causes a lot more blood than usual to come out of Jane, something they typically only see on fresh corpses. Austin bottles up the blood and puts it in their fluid fridge, but when he goes to collect more samples from the body, the container has emptied all over the fridge, despite not being open or tipped over. Now that the body is open, Tom believes that her waist has been warped from wearing a corset for a prolonged period, something that they only wore a long time ago. Her lungs are also completely blackened, Tom remarking that smoking 10 packs a day for 30 years wouldn't explain this discoloration. He would only expect this from a victim who has 3rd-degree burns, but her body has clearly not experienced anything like that. Her other organs are covered in marks and scar tissue, making the situation even stranger. If the outside of her body had been reflecting what the inside of her body is showing, she would be completely mangled, but instead she kind of just looks British. They hear a bang in the morgue, and Austin goes to investigate it. He sees something spooky in the hallway mirror, but when he goes to check it out, it's not there. But he does hear banging in the vents. Austin gets up on a stool to check out what's inside and finds Stanley inexplicably mangled. Stanley had been around the family for a long time, but he was also Austin's mom's cat. One of the last things Tom had of hers. We get a really sad scene where he takes Stanley to the cremator in the morgue, where Tom asks for a moment alone. During this time, Austin returns and sees one of the doors for the corpses is opening by itself. He closes it and they continue, but I gotta stop real quick because the movie does get better about this. But you have a corpse with inexplicable injuries and you just saw a creature in the mirror. Your cat just mysteriously got mangled, and now you're seeing things open by themselves. What on earth are you still doing here, dude? I can't even tell him to go home. He literally lives upstairs, but leave. They start stage 3 of the autopsy, the stomach, and immediately find more worrying things. They find a flower known as Jimson weed, which is a paralyzing agent. They think this may have caused the damage to her organs, but also thinks this confirms she's from up north. I'm not harping on the up north thing anymore after this, but this literally grows in Virginia, the state they are in. Anyway, we hear on the radio that winds are picking up to 60 miles per hour and a nasty storm is brewing. This makes Austin suggest that they finish up in the morning. Not because of any of the ghost stuff, just because of the wind. But Tom insists that Sheriff needs to cause death by the morning. He tells Austin he can leave if he wants, but unlike earlier, in a tone to chastise him, causing them to continue. Inside her intestines, they find some sort of shroud with Roman numerals and symbols wrapped up in a ball with a tooth inside. They remark this is weird that the stomach acid hasn't dissolved this yet, but Austin discovers the tooth is actually Jane's missing tooth, showing someone ripped out her tooth, wrapped it in the shroud, and forced her to swallow it. This causes the gears to shift for Austin, where he begins to think this was a ritualistic killing. It's clear to them that whoever did this was intentionally keeping her alive to torture her. The storm picks up, and the weatherman starts getting ominous.
One thing's for sure, you're not going anywhere.
Before the radio messes up again, causing the song from earlier to play. During this, Tom continues the autopsy and finds that symbols have been written on the underside of her skin. I can't show this and it's pretty gross. Probably the most extreme case of body horror in this movie, but it's not really gratuitous to me. Not that I'd care if it was, I'm just letting the people that do care know. Upon this revelation, Tom kinda seems to realize it's time to go, but all of the lights pop and the door slams closed. When Austin gets the flashlight on, it's revealed the doors from the corpses are now open and empty. The generator kicks on, so they try to use the elevator, but they say there's not enough power for it. Probably not the case. I imagine the person who installed the generator just didn't want to be liable for an elevator being hooked up to it. So they go up the stairs to the bulkhead door, but it seems a tree has fallen on it. Austin doesn't have any phone service, and honestly, I work in basements a lot. There really isn't good service down there. So this isn't an egregious trope for me. Plus, they have a landline in the office that actually is working, where they get a hold of the sheriff. However, the signal is poor, and the call ends when the two hear something in the hallway. The corpse starts slamming on the door, but the two reinforcing it with a cabinet until it eventually stops. Afterwards, Tom heads into the bathroom of the office as a wound he got during the autopsy has opened back up and he needs to clean it and wrap it. He notices a shower curtain moving and Austin sees a shadow behind it. Tom moves the shower curtain and nothing is there, but instantly gets dragged the other way before the bathroom door slams. Austin busts the door down and Tom is beaten up pretty bad, but while he's being checked up on, the door to the office was broken down. There's nothing there, but it definitely shows that they are not safe. Tom couldn't see much while being attacked because it was in the dark, but he did see one thing, the gray eyes of Jane. The two decide that they need to do something and head towards the coroner room. They find the face covering for the victim of the gunshot wound in the hallway, showing it's roaming. Upon entering, they notice everything they've taken out of Jane has started decomposing rapidly. The first sign of anything from her is decomposing. They decide the autopsy isn't worth it anymore and try taking her to the crematorium, but the door closes and locks, trapping them inside. Austin tries breaking the door down, but it won't open. All he manages to do is create a gash in the door, where we see the mesothelioma victim on the other side. The two decide that it needs to be done regardless, so they douse Jane in lighter fluid and light her on fire. This causes a pillar of fire to come out of her body and start lighting the rest of the room ablaze, before Austin gets the fire extinguisher to put it out. Afterwards, we see her body is in the exact same condition as it was before they started the fire. They don't have time to discuss this as they hear the elevator coming down, showing it's working again. They pick up the axe and begin walking towards it, but when they make it to the door, it shuts and they have to wait for it again. But they hear the bell again as the entity makes it down the hallway. The elevator finally arrives and the two enter, but the power dies as soon as they do. When the entity gets closer, Tom takes the axe and drives it through its neck. Afterwards, we hear the rasping of a woman, and when they exit the elevator, they see it's Emma that he hit, not the entity, coming to get Austin for their 11 p.m. date. Austin is devastated and blaming himself for her even being there, but the elevator is going up, so Tom drags him inside, where the power just goes out again. Tom blames himself, and Austin says he couldn't have known, and this triggers the exposition dump of Austin's mom, who seemingly ended herself. Tom blames himself for this, which is likely why Austin is so adamant on being around and helping him out. We never really feel the effects of this, so it doesn't do a lot for me, but it does feel needed. It's not a super long section, so it's passable filler for the movie. After this, Austin asks why Jane hasn't just killed them. It's almost like she's intentionally keeping them alive to torture them. He also comes to the conclusion that every time they started a new stage of the autopsy, she tried stopping them. It might not be super obvious if you're not watching the movie, but every stage, the power would flicker and the radio would seemingly be trying to tell them to stop. Austin comes to the conclusion that she's been trying to stop them from finding something, and that they have to find out what that is. A callback to when Tom had mentioned that every body has a secret earlier in the movie. They head back towards the coroner room, and the halls are filled with the smoke from the cremator, and through the smoke we see Tom getting attacked and cut a few times by one of the corpses. Ultimately, this doesn't really do anything, and they just keep going afterwards, and stage 4 of the autopsy begins, the brain. They get right into it, and they cut into her skull and reveal,
"That's why we couldn't find cause of death. She's still alive."
I think it's funny at this point in the movie, Austin is against this idea. He's like, alive? What? We took out her heart. We set her on fire. Like, are you even in this movie? Do you not remember the last hour of your life? Anyway, Austin accidentally deciphers the shroud from earlier and reveals that it says Leviticus 20:27, and also finds that the date the shroud is from, which is 1693. They look this up in the Bible and find that the passage says, "Any man or woman who consults the spirit of the dead shall be put to death." In the movie, they add, "for they are a witch," but I looked up the passage and I think BibleHub.com might be more reliable in terms of Bible information, so I don't think it actually says that in the Bible. Austin starts insinuating that she's from Salem, and Tom says that there were no actual witches in Salem. And then Austin says that he has to stop denying that she's a witch, which is hilarious from the guy who was denying that she was alive 2 minutes ago. But they eventually decide she is actually from Salem. But the ritual they did to kill a witch was done on an innocent person, caused her to live forever, and she has been able to feel everything done to her for hundreds of years, and now she wants to keep them alive to make them feel what she has felt. The movie loses me a little bit here, as Tom says that her suffering won't stop until, and doesn't finish his thought. I'm gonna revisit this later. But for now, we hear something pounding on the door, and Tom starts pleading with Jane, saying he won't fight her, just to let Austin go. At that moment, the slamming at the door stops. Tom's joints start crushing, and Jane start going back to normal. Jane's body is recovering back to its original state while Tom has experienced everything that has happened to Jane, begging Austin to kill him to end it. Eventually, he does, and while he's sobbing, we see Jane's eyes have gone back to their normal brown color, and the power comes back on. Austin hears Burke yelling from the bulkhead, and Austin makes his way over. Burke says the tree is gone and that all he has to do is open up. Keeps asking Austin to open up over and over until
open up your heart and let the sun shine in.
Austin hears the bell ring one last time, and when he turns around, sees the corpse of his father, scaring him to fall back and fall to his death. I really like the ending to the movie. We have the same officers from the opening scene, and it's almost like a recreation, but now it's at the family morgue, which paints a full picture of what happened at the beginning. Officer Burke is in complete denial that Austin or Tom could have caused the carnage that occurred. Burke says he wants Jane taken out of his county, likely suspecting she has something to do with it. During this time, we hear the radio say that it's the 4th consecutive day of clear skies and sunshine, showing how much influence Jane truly had over the night, showing the two whatever she wanted them to see, whether it's the storm, the power, the lights exploding, as everything is just back to normal now. This probably explains why Emma was portrayed to them as one of the corpses. The movie ends as we see Jane being taken to another county, while the driver is on the phone. We hear the radio switch to the reoccurring Sunshine song. Her eyes are also gray now, and we see her toe wiggle, and the movie ends. Now, there's a lot of questions I have, which normally would be okay if the movie hadn't already tried to explain things to me. I could just be dumb, but it seems like Tom was sacrificing himself to end her suffering. We even see her fully recover from that. But in the car ride, her eyes are just gray again. So was she just like pranking them the whole time? Like she's going from place to place causing havoc with no goal other than to hurt people? Because she's not really influencing people to end her suffering. She's sort of just creating more and then moving on. I don't know. I have a lot of mixed feelings towards like Tom's whole explanation. However, this movie is fun. I think it's a really good intro to horror. There's some body horror, some good visuals. It's a haunting, which is something that's pretty easy to digest, and it's not a super generic setting like moving into a new house or something like that. In terms of okay horror movies, this is close to the top of that list. It's a pretty fun watch. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe. I've been Kali, and I'll see you in the next one.